Matthew 5, chapter 5. The Beatitudes just means so much to me, and it's just how we are supposed to live our lives. And there are two things that I want to talk about tonight that we value that seem so insignificant, but are part of our survival. We either complain because there's too much of these two things, or we want more of these. One, we can hardly see, yet too little of it, and you can taste the difference. And too much of it, it can ruin your food. And the other is visible. It's needed during the night and when it's dark. Yet, too much of it in the morning, you'll say, like right now, I'll say, shut that off. But no, don't shut it off. And too little of it, it can make you feel unsafe. What is it? It's salt and light. You see, one works as it comes into contact with the food, and the other one is as it is turned on. You see, Jesus said that you are the salt and the light. And tonight I want to share with you an ancient formula that can, turn this community of Mount Zion upside down and this world upside down. So, let's just go to Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. And it says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. Verse 14 says that you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Verse 15, neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. You see, the Sermon on the Mount, it states that the Beatitudes are the elements of the Christian life. But tonight, I want to talk about the influence that it has on the Christian life. A Christian that is merciful, a Christian that is meek, or is a peacemaker, or is pure in heart. You see, we'll have a great influence in the lives of people who don't have a relationship with Christ. You see, salt was found, talk about salt first. Salt was found, or it was gathered in Palestine along the seashores or the inland lakes. And in the ancient times, salt was seen as a necessity of life. You see, because of its seasoning and preservative qualities, and it was one of the most highly prized minerals of that time. And in a lot of societies, it was so valued that it was used for money, as monetarily things. You see, the English word for salary is derived from the Latin word salarium, which refers to the payments made to the Roman soldiers by salt. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think I want to work for any salt. I'd rather work for some money. But salt, it was needed so much back then. And Herod's temple, it had a chamber that was just for the use of salt only, for ceremonial reasons, and for the payment of the Roman soldiers. Echo. And see, the reason why he kept this salt in this chamber was whenever a city was defeated, the custom was to throw salt throughout the whole city. And what this meant was that the city had been separated from its past. So you would be saying purified from its past. And Elijah, he used salt to purify the waters of Jericho in 2 Kings, 2nd chapter. And also, salt was used as a normal procedure, as when a child was born, they would rub the child down with salt to purify the child. And this was an ancient Arab peasant tradition. So salt is used to, well, it makes you thirsty, doesn't it? For one thing, salt gives you high blood pressure too, I think, doesn't it? But salt makes you thirsty. And salt is used as a seasoning. In the biblical times, and still today, salt is used to season our food. Who likes to eat food, bland food? You know, we put a little salt in it to, as Emeril Lagasse would say, kick it up a notch. You know, and even though salt is so small and yet hardly seen, it makes a big difference when applied to a substance. You see, salt was used to also flavor the offerings and the sacrifices. Back in Leviticus and in Ezekiel, they talk about it. And in Romans chapter 12, verse 1, it says, all who would present themselves a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, must receive the saving soul, the righteousness of our Savior. You see, in order for our lives to be a living sacrifice for God, that's right. They must be preserved and seasoned with the righteousness of Christ. He is the one that purifies us. Salt was also used as a preservative. But it didn't have, because they didn't have refrigerators like we have now, or deep freezers. So they covered everything up in salt. Salt was also used as friendship. You see, salt was seen as a covenant relationship. You see, it's a covenant of salt forever before the Lord with you and your descendants with you. It says in Numbers 18:19. What they would do was put some salt in their hand and they would shake hands with one another. And there was an Arab saying that says, there is salt between us, which is a covenant. But Jesus said, what did he say in that verse? He said, you are the salt of the earth. What did Jesus mean when he said that statement? You see, it's the silent witness of the Christian believer. It's the influence that you have over other people's lives to season and preserve for eternity. You see, Christ is saying, let your influence seasons people's lives for his kingdom. Salt changes things, doesn't it? It only takes a little salt to flavor a whole pot of beans. And it only takes a little salt to flavor a whole community. It just takes a little salt to flavor a whole neighborhood or a whole workplace. And see, the whole issue of salt is for what? Seasoning. The seasoning, well, we'll say it, is to influence. For us, the whole issue of salt is to influence someone else that doesn't know Christ. A man once said, he said, the salt is no good if it never leaves the salt shaker. It's only a decoration to the kitchen table. You see, our salt is no good if we just keep it right here, where we sit, where we come, where we worship. We have to take that salt out that door with us. We deny the salt function when we fail to mingle with people that are lost. We deny the salt function when we fail to be kind, when we fail to be merciful and peacemakers. We deny the salt function as the principles of the kingdom of heaven. We are not to draw away from society. But let me remind you, we are not of the world, but we live in the world. And if we, as salt, do not rub up against those who have no flavor, well, then how are they going to know about Jesus Christ? You see, Jesus said that we are the salt. He didn't say that we are the earth. He didn't say that you ought to be. He said that we are the salt. We are either the salt or we're either the world. A man named G.C. Campbell Morgan, he said this nicely. He wrote about Jesus. He said, Jesus, looking out over the multitudes of his day, he saw the corruption. the disintegration of life at every point, its breakup, its spoliation. And because of his love of the multitudes, he knew the thing that they needed most. It was the salt, in order that the corruption should be arrested. You see, salt witnessing is about showing true friendship. The true friendship of Jesus. And what's the main ingredient to that true friendship? Love. That love that we have in our hearts. When love fills our hearts, it flows to others. And this love is larger than the whole universe. This love is cherished in our hearts, and it sweetens the entire life, and it spreads to everyone. God's love. Our God reigns right here in our hearts. It's this and only this that can make us the true salt of the earth. That love that we have. And remember when Lot went his way and Abram went his way, and Lot and his family went to Sodom and Gomorrah. And when the angels came there and told him, Lot, get your people, get your wife, get your daughters, and get out of here because God is going to destroy this place. And remember, as they were leaving, he gave them instructions not to look back. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt, because she wanted to be part of the world. We're not pillars of salt. We are the salt of the earth.